Welcome back to my channel. This is vlog number 4 where we're going to be looking at freehold versus leasehold. So one of the things that I usually get from my clients and buyers is when I tell them that okay, so and so is a leasehold, I usually see that frown in their face. You know, that disappointment that oh, they are not interested in leasehold. You know, they are purely looking at just freehold status properties. So I want to uncover some of the myths, okay, regarding freehold and leasehold, and what is the public's perception and why freehold is perceived to have a higher value compared to leasehold. So let's get started. Freehold means that the land and the property it's perpetually owned by you forever, so you can pass it on to your great grandchildren and so on. Okay, you can pass it to your future generations to come. And for leasehold, title that will be stated in your SPA or sale and purchase agreement, tanah ini telah dipajak untuk tempoh ni. So it will state that this property and land has been leased for a certain period of time. Most of the time, usually the case is 99 years. So you only own the land or the property, the land and the property for 99 years, and after which you will need to renew the land status or it will be taken back by the state authorities. So that's what it means by leasehold. Let's look at myth number 1 on why freehold properties have a perceived higher value compared to leasehold. Now, myth number 1, you own the freehold land and property forever. Now, this is not entirely true because based on our land code, federal land code, okay, and Land Acquisition Act of 1960, the federal government can anytime take away, repossess your property, your land, okay, for any future development. Now, this is the case for high-speed rail, MRTs, okay. They have the executive power to actually repossess your land, okay, and compensate you for whatever the prevailing market rate is for your land or property. So the idea or notion that you actually hold the land forever is not entirely true, because there is a clause that states that the federal government can at any time repossess your land, okay, for any future developments. So myth number 2, freehold property has a higher value compared to leasehold property. Not all leasehold properties will be cheaper compared to freehold because there are many considerations that we have to take into play, okay, such as the location, what is the supply and demand, what is happening, is there any future growth in that particular area. Now, there are many instances that I know of, maybe some of you as well, where leasehold property in those areas are actually outperforming the freehold compared to other locations, okay. Some of the examples are like leasehold areas like Mid Valley, Sunway Pyramid, where else? Bangsa South, okay, Kota Damansara. They are actually outperforming certain areas of freehold properties. So it's not entirely true. So we have to really look into and take into considerations of other factors. However, given that two properties are side by side in the exact same location and similar spec, similar perspective, the leasehold will usually, now remember, it will usually be 20 to 30% cheaper compared to the neighbor freehold property. Alright, so as an investor, you really have to think, is it really worth it to be paying 20 to 30% extra premium just for that freehold? Or just go for the leasehold, which is 20 to 30% cheaper. So that is up to you guys based on what is your investment preference, alright? But case to case, when the two properties are side by side, usually the leasehold will be slightly cheaper compared to freehold. Now, myth number 3, freehold land usually enjoys higher capital appreciation for the leasehold land. Okay, now this is definitely true. It has been proven time and time that usually enjoy a higher capital appreciation compared to the leasehold neighbor. This is especially true when it comes to leasehold land which has only about 20 to 30% of its remaining lease. For example, areas like Petaling Jaya, SS2, which are all leasehold, are all having the lease of less than 50 years and remaining, some even shorter terms. So those kind of properties will not enjoy the same appreciation rates compared to the freehold neighbors. Myth number 4, financing for freehold land is easier compared to leasehold land. This myth has been confirmed because banks are usually more willing to give out loans to freehold lands compared to leasehold with a lease of less than 50 years and below. I have mentioned this in the previous case. for leasehold lands in Petaling Jaya, okay, and certain areas which have a very low lease, banks will usually adjust their rates. So you will not be able to get the maximum financing that you require, okay, compared to freehold land. So this myth is definitely true. And even if you do secure a loan for the leasehold, the financing amount will usually be less than what you require. For example, if you wanted a 90% margin of financing, they will usually slash it to maybe 50 or even 60%, alright, depending on case to case. Myth number 5, leasehold properties are usually more difficult to sell. Now this is confirmed. This is especially true for leasehold properties that are nearing the end of its lease, like what I mentioned earlier, those that have less than 50 years remaining. In this case, if you are the owner of this leasehold property and you really need to sell off your property, you want to consider renewing your lease, push it up to 99 years and then put it back to the market. So in this case, buyers are more willing to accept because the lease now is back to 99 years rather than 30 years or below remaining, okay? So it's easier to be absorbed by the market. And another point to note is the process of selling for a leasehold property usually takes a longer time compared to freehold. Now the process can take anywhere between 3 all the way up to 9 months, especially if there's a foreigner involved, okay? Because for leasehold properties, it has to go through the consent of the state. Hence, the process of transferring buyers, okay, of changing names, will usually take a longer process. That is why overall, leasehold properties are more difficult to sell compared to freehold. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 5 myths concerning freehold and leasehold properties. Alright, so in conclusion, I just want to state that freehold property is not always better than leasehold. We really have to look deeper, look into the subject, and really need to compare, dive deeper into the subject of looking at which area are you looking at, what is the price point, okay, what are the supply and demand in those areas. So it all really depends on what is your current situation right now. If finance is not an issue, if money is not an issue, by all means always go for freehold. But if you think the status of the land is not so important and you can compromise on it to get a better location, you know, a better price for a bigger room in a certain area in KL, then go for leasehold. So it really all depends on what are your set conditions, what are your priorities. Alright, so that's the end of our video. I hope you have enjoyed it, guys. Now if you believe that these videos have truly helped you, have brought some value to you, kindly do me a favor, guys. Subscribe, click like, and share these videos to your friends and families. So for our next topic, we'll be looking at why you should get started on your property investment journey. Alright, so stay tuned, guys. See you next.